Hey, so I'm Zachary Davison and I'm an engineer, and I primarily work for a company called Meets More in Tokyo at the moment. And I'm here today to talk about Deer, which is a tool that I've built. So, what is Deer? Deer is a Claude multi-tool. The idea of Deer is, let's say you're an engineer who's using AI, you're primarily using Claude Code, and you're building things with Claude Code, you're pretty happy with it, but there's two main things that you want to solve. And one of those is that you would really like to run with dangerously skipped permissions, and you also want to start parallelizing work with multiple agents in an easy way. Now, there's a lot of tools out there like this. Let's call them coding agent orchestrators. So things like Claude Squad, Claude Swarm, Multi-Claude, right, are ones that come to mind that are kind of similar. But I built Deer because I wanted something that's a softer touch, because a lot of those tools are quite heavy in the sense of they're quite opinionated. They involve a lot of agents interacting together. And really, I just wanted to have a way to launch a lot of Claude agents instances, have them be running with dangerously skipped permissions in a safe way, and be able to work with them, attach into them, monitor them, things like that. And yeah, so that's what we're going to show today. So there's four goals I have with Deer when I built it. One of them is I want to quickly run and work with multiple Claude instances at once, right? The second is I want to be able to use dangerously skipped permissions. And third is I want to use my Claude Code subscription for everything. So if I have a subscription, I want that to be used instead of having to have API tokens or anything like that for my Claude instances. And I want it to really feel kind of like Claude. I want the experience to be as close to using Claude as possible and not abstracted as much as possible. So let's maybe have a quick demonstration of just the basic usage of Deer. So there's a task that I want to do. We can say, for example, tell me about this repo, right? And I could also in parallel spin off another thing that I want to do. So I also want to remove the GitHub PR template because it's a test template that I just added previously. I don't really want it on the repo. And you'll see straight away that these have started up, these have spun up these instances, and I've already got a little waving emoji like this, which means that it wants to tell me that it needs my intervention. So it's idle now, and it wants me to intervene, right? So I can hit enter, and I get attached to it, and now I'm just looking at Claude via tmux, right? So I've got a normal Claude instance. I can say, describe the architecture to me in more detail, right? And it's just using normal Claude. So I can go ahead and I can detach from that. So if you don't know tmux, there's some basic guidance in the bottom right of all you need to really know. So we hit Control B and D and we detach. And then we go here and it's churning away doing more stuff. I can view the logs, I can look at verbose logs to see more details about what it's doing, stuff like that. We can go and look at our other task now, and we see what it's doing, and it's actually made some changes. So we'll come back to that in a little while. So first I should probably talk about what's going on here. So from an architectural standpoint, let's look at the architecture. So the basic architecture, if we're using Claude, is something like this. So we've got the host is running Claude's talking to the internet, right? And we're approving tool requests or whatever it wants to do. And that's our usual workflow of just using basic Claude. And the problem with this is as soon as we add dangerously skipped permissions, we run into the lethal trifecta problem, right? So the lethal trifecta is this, which is whereby if we have access to private data, the ability to externally communicate and exposure to untrusted content, and we don't have tool approvals, right, where we're basically intervening anytime anything has to be done and we're reviewing it, then the agent is essentially, we should consider it risky and compromised and prompt injectable, and it could do anything on our system, right? So this obviously isn't good. So in this scenario, as soon as our only protection is the tool approvals, so as soon as I add dangerously skipped permissions, I have problems, right? So looking at the architecture for Deer, what we have is we have the host, we have Deer, right? And then Deer is using SRT, which is sandbox runtime, the Anthropic sandbox runtime. And SRT is really just an abstraction over two things of bubble wrap on Linux and sandbox exec. So we're on Ubuntu here. So we'll be using bubble wrap behind the scenes, but we don't see it. We just deal with SRT. And if we're running on Mac OS, it would be using sandbox exec. And then there's an abstraction to SRT that allows us to pretend those two things are the same thing. So and then within those sandboxes, we have Claude running. And those Claude instances are working in a work tree. So Deer is creating a work tree for these tasks that we have over here. Each is a separate work tree. And they're file system isolated, right, sandbox, and they're network sandbox as well. So then if we go to how do we actually access the internet? So how does these sandboxes talk outwardly? So via SRT, we have a domain allow list. We allow the minimal amount of things needed for it to work, which is basically Claude API, couple of other internal things. I think Claude uses Sentry internally, so we whitelist that to avoid just any spammy errors that we're getting from Claude. And that's basically what's handling network connectivity. So Claude doesn't actually talk to the internet, it talks to the proxy talks to the internet. But actually, the proxy, the SRT proxy is talking to the Deer man-in-the-middle proxy. And the Deer man-in-the-middle proxy allows us to actually essentially inject headers into the requests so that we can remove the API keys and the OAuth credentials or whatever else for our subscriptions from Claude. So Claude itself doesn't actually know about those environment variables, so we don't have to inject them into the Claude instance. And to make Claude not complain, we give it some dummy values, basically proxy managed and topic API key. And then when the Deer man-in-the-middle proxy sees those, it substitutes them with the real keys. So Deer man-in-the-middle proxy runs on the host, and it has the actual environment variable access. And then that way we can touch the internet. And then we can relax via config. We can relax the domain allow list if we want to make it less secure, but more capable in terms of what it may be able to do. And we can do that for file directories as well. But the defaults for Deer are supposed to be good enough to whereby you shouldn't really have to mess with this unless you have a specific use case that you're trying to do. For example, the file system restrictions, it'll read your home directory, Deer, at the start, and it will dynamically generate the file block list so that everything in your home directory is blocked. And we have to do that because Claude actually puts files into the home directory that it needs to use, and it needs to be able to write into the home directory. So we just forbid it from accessing everything else, just for safety. So if we go back to Deer, we've already talked about some features here. We've got the task creation, which is the basic task creation. You've seen that we can attach into these instances. We can detach from them, right? But what do we do when we've actually finished the work that we want to do? So how do we get that out now? We want to basically start merging that into main, and we go through GitHub is the plan. So what we do here is we just hit P, and as soon as we hit P, you got this little animation going. You can see over there. I think it's actually this way, right? The camera's inverted. And it'll create a pull request, and once it's done, we can look at the logs, we look at the verbose logs, and you can see here that it'll create, it does a few things. So this is actually running in Deer and not in the agent sandbox. So the agent sandbox doesn't actually interact with GitHub at all, so it doesn't need the permissions to access GitHub, because GitHub is actually a prime place to put kind of prompt injection stuff. If it goes ahead and starts looking at gists or raw files that people upload in random repos, we could get prompt injected by something, right? So the safest thing to do is to just let Deer handle the GitHub part. So it takes any uncommitted changes that have been made, and then it passes to Claude. It goes to the Claude CLI, not using your API keys, using your subscription because it's using the CLI. And then asks Claude to generate the branch name, the PR description, the PR title, things like that, right? So if we hit P, right, this will actually open in the browser our thing, and we can see this PR that it's made, and we can go ahead and review that, right? And it's just deleted the PR template like we asked it to, which is this file, and we can go ahead and go, okay, let's merge that, right? We could go through our review process, our CI, whatever else we want to do in this situation, but that's what we could do. So this is the primary way of interacting, and if we go back to our Deer TUI, we see that actually the state's already been updated. it shows a little purple thing that I don't use many colors in my terminal, but these are actually colored purple. The links in colored purple and green depending on the state if you're working in that environment. And we can go ahead and attach in there if we want and continue working. So we could say restore it, and if we wanted to, we could continue to create new pull requests from that, right? So, but also we're done with this task, so we can just kill it. We can just hit backspace and it's going to delete it because it's already merged, so it doesn't confirm us. So for the first one, if I press backspace, it's going to say, hey, this agent's idle. You haven't actually created a pull request that's been merged yet, so are you sure you want to delete it? We can delete it. And then it will clean up the work trees in the background, the sandboxes, and anything else you need to do. So another thing we can do also, we can say, let's just add a basic file, add test.txt with some dummy text, right, just as an experiment. And then what we can do is, if we tab into our main list, I can actually hit S, all right? I'll wait for it to actually have done some stuff first. But then what I can do, sorry, a bit of a cold. It's going to go ahead and write this file. We can observe it as per usual. And whenever Claude is finished fiddling around, right, it's finished, ready. Now we'll detach and we'll hit S. And now we're actually in the work tree on the host. So this actually it's in tmux, and the only reason it's in tmux is to have the consistent behavior for attaching in shell, so it feels the same. But basically, we're still on the host here. This is essentially just as if we cd to the directory. So here we could do whatever we wanted, right? We could open some files in Vim, you know, we can open VS Code, right? We could run the build, run the test, do whatever we need to do. Or we could run the server, right, and just test the actual functionality from within this directory. And then I can detach when I'm ready again, and I can come back to this, and I can still open my pull requests as I wanted to, so I can intervene. That's the majority of the things about Deer. So it's not meant to be particularly complicated. There's a lot of stuff that happen behind the scenes to make this really smooth and soft touch and basically feel just like using Claude Code, but kind of multiplexed in a way, right? So it supports a few languages. So if we get out of this session, right, and we launch it with some like this flag, we can launch it in Japanese. And then we get like a Japanese version. And then if we open a PR with that, the PR will actually also be in Japanese, so that it will know to maintain that language. And it also passes that through to Claude, so Claude will respect the language if you so wish, right? So the languages are actually translated just with LLMs, so I can't really guarantee the accuracy of the translation, but if someone wants to add a language or wants to make any corrections, please open a PR on the repository. So repository is here. Here, there's some general instructions about how you can use Deer and things it can do. And there's also a GitHub page I'm on the wrong account here, but there's a GitHub page that's we can go and look at. That has better documentation. It's also there. So that's a quick tour of Deer. I've been using it to build Deer itself for a while now. So I've got like all 185 closed PRs, and you can see all of them are Deer PRs basically. Some of them are tests, but yeah. And that's how it works. So yeah, I hope this is helpful to you. If you're like me and you wanted something that's just a lighter touch version of a Claude multi-tool, and you didn't really like this kind of orchestrating agents flow, which seems to be kind of popular, right? I mean, I feel that goes really extreme if you get to things like Gastown and stuff like that. But even the milder versions of it, for me, there was always kind of merge queues and things like this, and agents orchestrating other agents. And I really just wanted a way to spin things up. It's worth pointing out that there is no merge queue or anything like that, so you will get merge conflicts, perhaps, between these agents, and that's just on you to resolve. You can resolve them by just asking Deer to do it. It's just another task, so you can just basically ask a task and say, hey, can you resolve the merge conflicts with PRX, right? And you can do that. So that's it. So yeah, hope this is helpful to you, and if please have a look at the repo. If welcome contributions. If there's any feature requests or anything that you'd like to have, please let me know. Just open a GitHub issue. I'm always happy to make improvements. One thing to note is that, unfortunately, this is because of SRT. This is tightly coupled to Claude Code at the moment. There is an alternative abstraction over bubble wrap and sandbox exec, aka seatbelt, called birdcage, right? But unfortunately, it's GPL3, which is a little bit too restrictive for me personally, for some of the things I want to use this for. So I don't really want to start depending on this. And for now, SRT is doing the job for us. But I would hope to expand that in future if the options for abstracted isolation mechanisms improve. And there are some more options out there. So yeah, that's Deer. Thank you.